Let's build. We're talking AI, we're talking workflows, we're talking extensibility of the platform, using Summit, and Matt Wensing is here, man. How you doing?
Hey, good, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on. I mean, you got so much happening around AI and the platform right now. I think any kind of guidance is super helpful for
Yeah.
everybody. So appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and I love the format, I have to say, and also just sort of a caveat for my own folks watching this through our side. Chris has decided, in what I would call wisdom, to allow people to struggle on the air here, so we can see what it's really like to build these things. So I did minimal prep. Uh, because I think that's always a good test. And then, I appreciate your patience in advance is another way of saying all
Yeah,
that.
for sure. No, I think there's always something to be learned. I mean, this is real life HubSpot, and
Yeah.
the last thing that's true is, 1, 2, 3, 4 done, especially as the system gets more complex. And,
Mhm.
I was inspired to start this series when I went to enough admin hugs, with Cal Jepsen hosting, and watching product managers get
Mm.
surprised by something being different in HubSpot. their own tool. I'm like, okay, this is okay. We have permission to do
Yeah.
it this way. And also, especially for app, developers and the people plugging in, like there's no way in hell anybody can keep up with the platform right now. So
Mhm.
let's not set ourselves up to think that any of this is going to go perfectly. And
Yeah.
in the process, we actually learn some great troubleshooting skills, because no matter how plug and play people think their apps are, it's
Yeah.
very easy to set up HubSpot in a way that's going to make that not the case, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
happy to have people that are coming on and willing to kind of share that journey and go through that with us. And like I said, the this becomes the prep, like doing all this live, making sure it's working for people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
appreciate it, man.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. Uh,
But before we dive in, let's get some of the why. Like, so everybody's diving in, like, all right, I've got AI this. You can plug it in here, here, and here, and it can do this, this, and that.
yeah.
Like, give me some why and like what you're actually trying to accomplish with your tool here.
Yeah. So I think that okay, I have a bit of a spicy take as well. So maybe I'll share that second. Actually, it'll be more fun and it opens up a whole can of worms, spicy worms. But the first part is that I think AI has made everyone that's used it, I think, comes away with a little bit. Well, it's certainly an opportunity to be, but I think a lot of people come away feeling more ambitious about what they feel like they can do, because it is an incredible thing to hold and behold and use. And you're like, okay, I have a new weapon in my arsenal. And I think the human nature element is I want to do more with it. Um, I'm not really sure what that is yet, even. And so we see a lot of struggling also happening where people are going, I have this incredible tool. I want to use it, but I'm not sure how I want to use it, which is an interesting intersection, right? A lot of times people have a need and they want to, go looking for a solution. I think AI, it really is one of those solutions in search of a need. And I think that's okay, because I think a lot of inventions are that way. Like when we have a breakthrough around, hey, now we can do this with a laser or whatever, it takes time for the world to go like, well, how can we apply that? Like commercially, what does that let us do? And I was actually watching a video last night, and this is one of those reels in bed moments, and it was Bill Gates in 1992 being interviewed, and Bill Gates has to answer this question from this interviewer that says, "Well, isn't a book already like the ultimate interactive experience for someone?" And Bill Gates, with a straight face, has to defend the concept of the internet and interacting with something called multimedia. And he goes, imagine though if you could pluck a string and hear how it sounds without having to own an instrument. Imagine it. He had to basically be someone else's imagination to defend the entire internet like coming into existence. So
Wow.
this is not necessarily a bad sign that people are going, what do I use this for? Or even saying, can't we already do that with X? Or whatever. I think it's normal. I think with some technologies, you do never escape that kind of valley of we don't know what to do with it, and that's where a lot of things die. I don't think AI is going to be that way, and I think I can share from my own personal experiences kind of how I'm learning where AI fits, and I think that's the other thing is like we kind of have to. I used to watch a lot of Price is Right as a kid, but it's the Plinko thing where it falls into place eventually, and it's like AI right now is this Plinko ball that kind of has to find its slot in
I love that.
a very big stack and universe of tools. And I think there are some people who are going to try to use it as a point solution, and I think there's some people who are going to try to use it as a horizontal kind of layer. And I think either can be okay. And then my spicy take is the next part, but I'll just pause there for now. That's kind of that's
Yeah.
my why.
No, I think man, that Plinko example is so great because sometimes it's big money. Sometimes
Yeah,
the game is over. Like,
yeah,
and that's where like
exactly.
when people first see it for the first time, it is one extreme or the other where it's like, oh my God,
Hmm.
I'm going to use this to do all the things, even if I have no strategy. Let's just social
Yeah,
post, social post, social post, right? Oh, I
right.
can use it for commenting without myself. Like, all right, plug it in,
Yeah.
right? Or you see the first social post, you're like, oh, this is garbage. I'm never using this again, right?
Hmm.
And it's
Hmm.
like there is a happy medium to be had,
Very.
but it requires, you know,
Yeah.
showing up and playing the Plinko game like
Yeah,
over and over
and
and
look at the
over.
early internet page. I mean, so I started making my first websites in the late '90s. It was actually an Amazon affiliate, like book reseller. One of their first had a link on GeoCities. Point of all that is that I had a GeoCities website that recommended and sold books that linked to Amazon. A lot of GeoCity websites were just a bunch of blinking emoji or blinking gifs and a ticker counter, right? And it was like to defend the internet based on those is tricky, right? And I think this is what makes it fun, right? Is we can all sort of pick our example and then say like that's stupid, that's silly. But somewhere in there is like there is a discovery moment. I think there's more discoveries still in our future where look at what Ajax did for web pages. Look what JavaScript did for web pages. I mean, heck, I used to be a JavaScript hater. It's literally responsible for every interactive element we have now on the web, right? And it started out as like a kiddie language or a way of spamming people with little like, alert boxes when you got to a web page. So like all of this stuff can be used to spam or aggravate, or it can be used for amazing things. And I think it just takes us time. Like we have to play with this stuff. I think that's the number one encouragement that I would want to give to people is like experiment, 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 because the more you experiment, you are going to become fluent and you're going to be able to separate like the garbage use cases from the ones that are gold. And nobody can kind of do that for you, right? Everybody kind of has to have their own discovery of, oh, well, I tried to use it for this. It wasn't that great. But then, I tried it for this and it's incredible, right? And you're like,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
every business probably has one of the latter, but you kind of have to not stop until you find
Right.
it, right?
It takes a
Yeah,
minute to get there sometimes. It's not
absolutely.
dissimilar from HubSpot, as I've introduced it to several sales teams.
Yeah.
It's inevitable that every single salesperson finds something else to get excited about. Either it's the templates or it's the meeting links or it's the sequences.
Hmm.
And you never know. Like there's no way to tell. That's the challenging
Yeah.
part. It's like, but when
Yeah.
you get there, you're like, yes, you
Yes.
figured it out. HubSpot
Yeah.
is valuable for you. Like, all right, can we get back to the
It had a thing.
actual usage of HubSpot now? Okay, we
Yeah.
can. Cool.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. There is something there, and that's the challenge with any multifaceted horizontal platform. And that kind of is a good segue to my spicy take, which is I think every company of sufficient scale, and HubSpot's definitely one, is kind of having or has had their existential crisis around AI and what their own relationship with AI is going to be. And I think you see that. And I wrote an article on this called "The Programmable Web," which is stealing a title of a site that existed a long time ago. So that's not original with me. But the programmable web, the concept is, I really think AI, going back to what I said in the first place, is arming people with this new ability to create software. And yes, it can create text, but it's actually really good at creating software. Yes, it hallucinates. Yes, bugs. But back to the point, it's really good at creating software that people wouldn't write themselves. And I think that is breaking down some kind of final barriers or walls between HubSpot has developers that work at HubSpot with HubSpot email addresses that decide what the roadmap is, and they build features. And then on the other side, you have hundreds of thousands of customers or millions of users that go, we can kind of ask AI to do a thing, and it'll do it right now. And I don't have to wait for a release to have this new capability, right? Like I have this developer sitting over here, right? And so there's actually this bit of a tension between platforms and AI when customers themselves can start making things that they couldn't before. And now suddenly they're like, well, we could wait for feature X, which is slated to release in Q3 of next year, or we can almost use AI to kind of build our own version of it and have it next week. And it won't be as good, it won't be as tightly integrated. But that to me is a real strategic challenge for, it's not just HubSpot, Salesforce, HubSpot, Intercom, all these companies, because now you're like, okay, so what is our role really going to be when our own customers can create software? Kind of cliffhanger rhetorical statement, but like that's a big challenge, I think. And so I have some thoughts on that, which I'll walk us through. But my short version of my answer is, I think people should be creating anything and everything they can. And I think that that tension, it creates this really healthy competition between a platform and its own customers where, Apple has to navigate this with the App Store on our phone, right? Like there were flashlight apps before there was the flashlight built into iOS, right? And so I think more companies like HubSpot are going to actually face that, where the pace of innovation external to them is going to start to eclipse their own internal pace. And they kind of have to decide, again, how to support that. I think supporting it is the answer. Going back to Bill Gates, I was a Windows fanboy as a kid, but like what made Windows and a dominant force in the 90s was Microsoft saying, we're going to be a partnership company. We're going to be the platform or the aircraft carrier that supports millions of developers creating millions of apps. I think HubSpot and others kind of have that opportunity right now if they seize it.
Yeah. So, I think that team, and that's what I've told several product managers, like trying to raise above and like get in the coaching mindset and like not always building things that do, because you can't do that for me. Like I'm in the task right now. And if I need help right now, I'm going to try to solve it right now. That's where the best ingenuity and innovation comes from. Yep. And if I can build something that gets close to solving right now, like we see it already with people creating properties when they shouldn't and stuff like that. Right. So using all these AI tools to say like, hey, this user has created 20 properties about this. Maybe you should show them this video. Right. Yes. Or maybe like they should be using this tool instead. Like that's going to facilitate like all this, the ownership and the agency that the users want. Right. And if the best company to like apply AI in that way is going to be in good shape. And I anticipate the way they're building everything out modularly right now. I think as early as next year, and I'm just putting this out the record, like in the case that I'm right, like anybody who's having this conversation, it's like, just imagine if you log in and the whole interface is just continually dynamically updating based on your user type and the team that you're on, so that you're never going to see stuff you don't need to see until you give me a signal that you actually need to see it. And so these cards, and it's setting up the way that they're developing the product is setting up for that. But then it's always going to come back to like strategy and planning as a business.
Yes.
Like if you don't set it up that way, there's no way AI can learn it like to do that for you. Right.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yeah, man. So I think we're gonna have a few conversations.
This is fun.
Point,
right? This is fun. So let's create and try to create something.
So what's Summit? Tell me like what Summit does, and you can do this like if you want to build out the workflow. Like as we do that, that's cool. Or however you want to do that.
I'll give you so we're looking at HubSpot right now, obviously, and this is the workflows tool. shout out to the product team there. They've been great to talk with about what this does and how we can integrate with it. What Summit does is we allow um, people to build, and I would call it so similar visual programming, Canvas. You see some. This should sort of rhyme with what you just saw in terms of blocks, boxes, and arrows. But it's a visual programming, you might call it, visual development. Some people call it no code. I would actually say Summit's more of a low code. So in order to be really, I'd say to be great with Summit, understanding APIs is very helpful. I think basic understanding of JSON in terms of structures of data and objects is really helpful. So it's a little bit more of I can build things, I can make things. If you're using Zapier and you're really fluent with it, I think you'd be right at home in Summit. If you're using a tool like Make or Node Nation, I think you'd probably even be more comfortable with it because it tends to be a little bit more ambitious. I'd say, going back to that word, if you're using those no-code tools or even and HubSpot workflows, and you want to do more, and you're motivated to learn how to do more, then Summit's for you in that sense. And so, yeah, we're going to connect some blocks, and each of those does something, and then we're going to basically use Summit to give us something we can call from HubSpot. So we're going to call Summit from a HubSpot workflow, do some work, and then send the results back to HubSpot.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that's what Summit does, and I'll kind of maybe build and talk at the same time.
Let's do it.
Sweet. Okay. So yeah, I was thinking through and I've got multiple screens, so I am paying attention here. I was thinking through what we can build, and I think it's a bit of a trick here. I could build something that wows people, like, wow, I've never seen that before, but then I think that's not necessarily the greatest thing for like a lesson of teaching you how these things work, because then there's two levels of new, right? There's like new material and new tools. So to stick with just the new tooling and not necessarily new material, I wanted to do something basic, which is we're going to have a workflow that has a new contact in this case. We're going to feed those contact details into Summit. We're going to do some work there. We're going to search the internet, kind of ask some questions on the web, pass those to GPT, get some results, and then ultimately update the contact in HubSpot, either through the workflow, or I'll show you how we can do that straight from Summit. So pretty awesome. Like just an enrichment workflow. So people know exactly what that is, obviously, but then the tooling is what's new. And then I think where I'd love to get to is, obviously, since you can call this Summit tool from any workflow, what you do in Summit could be anything, right? And I think that's the beauty of these tools, is like the long tail, right? Because I've had people come to me like, well, could we go out to the yellow pages and do this thing? And like, nobody's ever asked that before. And so everybody's going to have their own unique thing. And I could never speak to all those. So let's do something common. And then if there's questions around, can it do this specific thing? Those are always fun. So
yeah, no, that sounds great. I love bridging that gap, and cool. While keeping in mind that one of my best performing posts was how to create a contact in HubSpot. So
that's amazing.
Yeah,
exactly. The basics never get old in that sense. Yeah. So I'll start building, and this is the workflows view. And I have sort of lost track of which editions you have to have this. I know that some of their editions don't, but I know Operations Hub has it, and perhaps some others. So this is kind of a
like pro for most people unlocks what they need. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of the functionality you get inside, like custom code workflows, for example, like is an Operations Pro feature. There's some like different marketing actions that require marketing specific, pro or enterprise, but generally any pro level gets you access to any pro outside of Content Hub, I think, but who knows at this point?
Yeah. So I'm exactly. So definitely do research, but if you're looking for it, it's under the automations part of the menu. So here I am in workflows. I'm creating a trigger, this trigger for this purpose. Again, it's one of those could be anything things. Let's just say that the contact has a certain property, and we'll just, again, for this demo, let's say that last contacted is let's see, last contacted would be before and then let's just pick some date in the past. Again, this is just, yeah, we haven't talked to this person in a while, so that's what's going to start this flow. We're going to save this, and here's my trigger. So yeah, we're going to, it's been a while since we contacted them, and what we want to do now is we want to do some research on kind of what their company's up to today, maybe what their priorities and focus is, because we want to reach out to them, but we want to do it in a way that's up to date, right? So in order to do that, we could obviously create a to-do or a task or reminder for somebody to, again, hey, it's been a while, you've got this to do, go do some background research in this company, get a meeting going, etc. Let's automate that with AI instead. So what we can do is I have inside of Summit, and I'll go inside of Summit now, kind of flipping back and forth, but I'll narrate. If we go into our integration screen, you can see that we're connected to HubSpot. We do have one-click integrations with Salesforce, HubSpot, Pipedrive, and some others. And this is an OAuth integration, meaning once you connect, we'll actually take care of recycling that token and keeping you connected. So let's stay inside HubSpot for now. I just wanted to show you something, which is, that's why down here where you said integrated apps, I see Summit. It's because inside of Summit, I've connected to HubSpot. So I'm going to choose Summit as a step, and I'm going to say that I want to run a model. What is a model? Inside Summit, some people call them workflows, some people call them automations, zaps, scenarios, all kinds of names. We call them models. The reason we call it models is even more generic. A Summit model can actually do anything that code can do, pretty much. And so a model is just like, it's like a script. You could almost think of it as, or a program. So what I can do with the Summit app, so this is an app that we built that runs inside HubSpot. We can actually choose any model that we have inside of HubSpot to run. And so what that means is that in this dropdown, I actually have a list of all of the options that are inside of my Summit account. So this list here, right here, this dropdown is actually the same as all of these. And some of them say draft, which means it's not published, but any of the ones that are published, which don't say draft inside Summit, these are all available to me. And what that means is kind of nice to like reflect on that for a second. It means that you can basically build any custom functionality you want inside Summit. And with this one adapter app, if you will, it'll just appear in this dropdown and you can use it. And so I was a gamer as a kid, and I always loved it when they would announce like some kind of adapter where it's like, if you plug this into your, original Nest, you can plug this into that, right? It's like, it kind of opens up the possibilities. Our Summit app inside HubSpot is really more of an adapter that basically says we can allow you to talk to any of the apps or models you built inside of Summit. So the app we want to connect to today is this one called Search Enhanced Content Generator. The idea being that we want to pass this model in Summit a little bit of information about this contact. It's going to do some work, and then we have two options, and I think those are going to come up at the end, so I'll preview it now. One option is that we run this asynchronously, and what that means is that it's like a webhook, so we're going to call it, and then we're going to walk away, and we're not going to worry about getting the response. That's kind of the default when you're working with AI, or I would choose it as the default for this specific reason. AI calls take time, right? Sometimes they can take 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second. Sometimes they take 20 seconds, right? Just depends on how big the prompt is and how big the answer is. So in those cases, a lot of tools, especially, workflows in HubSpot, but also in tools like Intercom, Customer IO, et cetera, they do expect instant responses, or at least within a certain window. So if you uncheck this box and say run synchronously, that's fine for a model in Summit that runs really quick, doesn't involve AI. But since we are using AI, I'm actually going to say it runs asynchronously, which means, what does that mean in practice? It means the responsibility of updating HubSpot is actually going to fall on Summit now, because we're basically passing the baton to Summit, and we're going to say, hey, you run, this workflow is going to finish independent of that, and then Summit needs to take the results of the AI and update HubSpot on its side.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's really good.
Yeah. And it just gets down to that long call thing. And if, little plug for anyone else that's using this for other tools, webhook is a common word that's used to describe these asynchronous calls. Webhook is also just a word that's used in a lot of cases to describe just an API or calling an API, but webhook specifically means kind of a one-way street. Think of it that way. So this is going to be a one-way street. We could do another demo at some point where we do a round trip where we call Summit get the response back in the workflow. And then that's what this dropdown does. So it says, hey, what fields do you want to extract? So you see GPT in here and other options. This would be if we need that answer, because maybe down here, in some cases, you might have a workflow in HubSpot where based on the answer, you're going to branch. And, if the answer is this number, you'll do this. If it's this number, you'll do that. That makes Summit actually an option for you if you want to build like a decision engine or a little brain where you're like, tell me if this lead is any good, right? If it's good, I want to escalate it to a certain salesperson, right? Or I want to route it to a certain salesperson. If it's not very good, I want to, maybe just sign them up for my email list, but I'm not gonna assign a task or a follow up to a sales rep. Summit, a round trip is a good use case there because you want to use that response to make a decision, along this workflow. So, cool.
Okay.
But for today, we're not going to do any branching. This is going to just be basically a trigger to Summit and then Summit back to HubSpot on the back end. Cool.
Right. So basically this settings area is how do you want to run in conjunction with the workflow like itself?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Okay. And we're defining the relationship basically between the HubSpot making the call and what are HubSpot's expectations in terms of will I get an answer? Will it be an echo? Or will it just be, just going to send this and fire and forget, right? That would be the opposite, right? So we're going to do a fire and forget version here, which is asynchronous. And we're going to ask Summit to do some work, and then we're going to let Summit do the updating as well. So what do we pass into Summit here? So let's look at what we're being asked here. So we chose the model, which is the search enhanced content generator. And now it says model input JSON payload. So a little bit technical, again, more of a low code thing. But we do try to make that easy for you if you're in Summit. So we have documentation for this. So let me actually go to that. So I'll go to my Summit docs here. As I told you before we started, we do try to keep our docs up to date. That's really important to us to give motivated people a chance at solving their own problems. But what that means is that under integrations, I'm going to look under companion app, and I'm going to cheat because even though I partially built this, these are our documents here. So we're kind of walking you through what to do. And what this is saying is this is telling me where to find that part that goes into that next box I have to fill out. So the box that we're trying to fill out is this one. This documentation here shows you this is what we need, is this request body. So, and then we say, don't just copy paste. So this is one of those examples that'll keep you vexed for hours if you don't know it. Sometimes you need the whole thing. With HubSpot, you're actually just going to pass in a little part of that. And I'll show you what I mean. So if I come into Summit and I go into this model, on the left-hand side, you see his APIs and webhooks. Again, remember webhook is like synonymous with asynchronous or that fire and forget. We're going to click that. And then this right here is that I want to paste in. So I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste, but then I'm going to follow my own instructions where it says, don't just copy paste. So the reason it says don't just copy paste is we actually need to remove the outer part and just pass in this inner part here. And that inner part is this right here. So again, what this is, for those that aren't familiar, is this is a JSON object. It's just basically a data structure. And what that data structure is doing right now is it's letting us pass data from HubSpot to Summit. And so what I'm going to pass is the current model in Summit's kind of a hybrid. It's kind of it's a combination of search and kind of setting the stage for what we're going to do next. I'll show it again. The inputs are coming in here. So we're going to pass in a company and a website URL, and then we're going to do some search, and then we're going to call out to GPT, and then we're going to actually have to extend this to update HubSpot. So what do we want to pass in from this context? So we are going to have a search query here, and that's just the default. I live in Austin, Texas, so I just have a shameless plug for Austin as the default thing there. But what we want to do instead is we want to ask a question, right? This is what we're going to pass to AI. So I think for this, we want to say, I usually like to do something that you can figure out pretty easily about a company, but does require a little bit of effort. So let's say, what?
Like recent news or something like that?
Yeah. Recent news. What new product or services are being offered by this company based on news and their homepage? Okay. So again, handy to know. And that's what we'd like to know. And the company now, this is the reason I didn't, I just typed this in is because this isn't based on the contact. We're going to do the same kind of search for every single contact. What this does let me do is I chose in how I built the Summit model to expose this input, which means that I can reuse the same model to ask a different question in a different workflow. So maybe you've got a different workflow, which is like renewals or something, and you want to change the question to like, have they changed their pricing recently? Or is there anything I should know about fundraising or whatever? You could change that question, but that's nice because then you don't have to build a whole new model, right? You get to reuse the same model, just a different question. So for this one, and what we're going to do here, it's more like an SDR or lead rep flow. And then the company, it's telling me what my options are. So I'm going to pass in the name of the company from the enroll contact. Voila, that's cool. And then we want to pass in let's see, email domain is different than the actual website. Sometimes those are the same, but let's see. We want to find website URL. Okay, cool. So I'm going to pass the website URL. So these are variables. These are dynamic, and this is fixed. You could obviously get crazy here and even have the name of the company in here. So I could go, let's do that actually. Why not, right? If this doesn't work, that was the caveat we already had at the beginning of the thing. So now we've actually dynamically woven in the name of the company to the prompt, which is fun, right? So what new product service is being offered by company name based on news and their homepage. And if we want to be really, if we want AI to be really clued in here, we can do this, right? So we can just pass in this website URL here, just to double down on being specific, right? Could also change that to be Gartner or something if you wanted to see if they've been covered in some new Gartner publication or something. Depends on the size of the company you're working with or for. So that sort of thing. So we're dynamically composing a prompt. We are prompt engineering, actually, just using the little box that HubSpot gave us. And I think that's, it's great when companies and platforms give us just this little ability to compose something, right? Like that flexibility that this gives us. Yes, it's a little intimidating at first where you have to deal with curly braces and the quotes and the colons. That has to be structured right. But now that I have that flexibility, the sky's kind of the limit here, right? Because now I can basically engineer a prompt, right?
Right. No, I remember
at
the beginning of the year, I did a show with Scott Brinker, and he was also coming off of the back of like the state of MarTech, or that review that they do once a year. And he said it was all about composability moving forward, like understanding that all these tools are here. Relying on one exclusively all the time is a mistake. And giving composability, empowering people to compose is going to be one of the most important things that software companies like should be thinking about.
Completely agree. And I think sidebar commentary here, if this were halftime at a football game, commenting on the players in the field. If you haven't set up your platform to be composer friendly, I think that's the squeeze, right? I think that's where companies are being really tested. And I think, with the kind of engineering chops you see out of HubSpot and Dharmesh and what he's dabbling with, et cetera, you have to believe that that's there. But I think if a company hasn't really, if they've made assumptions, right? And that's the killer, right? If the assumption up until now has been, people will never be composing their own stuff like that, right? And that could be an implicit assumption. It could be an explicit assumption. But either way, that's the tough, right? That's the tough place to be in, right? So this is great.
They either won't be able to themselves, or we don't want them to and think we can control it.
That's right.
Neither of those things are true.
You keep that barrier up between we build stuff, you use stuff, right? And I think this little box is a great release valve for people who go, I want to compose, right? So, we have some flexibility here, and I'm thankful for that. So I'm going to hit save, and let's hit save, and this is created now. So now we have this step here that's going to run the Summit model and capture a response. And what we want to be able to do next is we want to be able to test this. So I'm going to click test, and I can pick a contact. Like to pick Brian, of course. I love that there's that built-in test option. So if this works, we should end up getting a call out to Summit that says, passes the again, HubSpot info and asks about any news or whatever's going on here. Now, one thing I'm going
We
to
should
do,
get a
I'm going to come
book
back to the
about
summit and
Breeze
test this.
AI.
What's that?
We should get a book about Breeze AI in response.
Yeah.
Like, what's new from this company?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. That good to set expectations. So if this works, and what I'm going to do first is just make sure I'm going to run this model in Summit in this view just to make sure that it runs. You can see like the little loading things working. The search takes time, and it looks like actually I have an error to fix. So let's fix that. What's broken? We should fix it. Make sure it works first before we try to run it from HubSpot. So yes, actually. Okay, let me sort of reorient here. So we have our inputs. So company and website URL, that's good. That's coming in. Here's the search query. That's going to get fed in as well. And then it looks like actually this is, oh, okay. Yeah, this is, I think we're, you know what? We actually we don't need this anymore. So I'm going to delete this. And our prompt is already here. So we don't need this anymore. So I think this will actually be better. And then, okay, we're getting our answer. So this is, in Summit, I'm doing a little bit of editing here. We're going to want to, the real prompt. So we said we were prompt engineering inside of HubSpot workflows. In Summit, our prompt actually lives inside this object here. So you can see GPT is this call. And in this case, I'm trying to make this bigger here. There we go. It'll be hard to navigate, but people can at least follow along easier. So this is the GPT block. We're choosing the model that we want to run, right? And what all AI calls expect is a prompt, right? Prompt object. So what this error is telling me is that I've got a broken bit of code for the input to GPT, which is this one. So I'm going to hover over this and see if I get any additional details. And it looks like what's happening is this right here is not being properly what's called escaped. So again, these are just things you learn by trial by fire, trial and error. But what I need to do is for each of these, I'm actually going to put my, so this is our question. And let me make sure, so this prompt here, let me make sure this exists here. So I think this is called, we don't have a prompt object anymore. That's part of it. So prompt is actually now my, we want to feed in here is we want to feed in that search query. So that's under our inputs. So we had our input arguments and then we had our search query. So this is going to be that, hey, what news and other stuff is going on right now for this company? And then colon. And then what this search results is we're actually searching the web. And I want to show you how that works in a second. I'm going to tell AI, please take into account the following search results. Because remember, AI, depending on how you're using it, if you're using it through ChatGPT, it can crawl the web when it knows to crawl the web. If you're using the API, it's not connected to the live internet, right? It has an update cutoff date, they call it. So depending on which model you're using, there's a different, newness or freshness to the information that GPT has. So what we're really doing here is what they call is like baby RAG, but a very nascent version of retrieval augmented generation, which means we're doing a web search, which is this step here. And this is actually going to be our query, which is the one what is the latest news and info. This is searching the internet and it's bringing back a bunch of examples. So in this example here, you can't really read this, but this searches the internet and it says, based on the most recent data, the best restaurants in Austin, Texas right now are, and it's a bunch of info, right? So we are, and you can't see my hovers when we're live streaming, it's fine. So this is going to, and I'm going a little fast because I'm excited. This search is going to do that search for latest news and info. We're going to feed that to GPT so it has that to look at when it's composing its answer. And then we're going to ultimately update HubSpot with the answer, right? So let's just make sure this is working now. I'm going to check and make sure that we are making all this safe. So these are little technical things that you learn as you use tools like this. So this is all safe. I'm going to zoom out so I can actually work again. And let's try rerunning this. Let's see if it works.
And it's not uncommon that we do need a part 2 for some of these sessions where we're kind of freewheeling it.
Yeah, completely.
So
this worked, which is great. And where I can finish is, and this would be, we can leave it quasi cliffhanger. However, what I'll do is I'm going to commit these changes so that this is saved inside Summit. And then we're at least going to give this one try. And I'm going to look at, this is a view here that shows us what's happening inside Summit as it runs. And if this works, I'm going to click test. And I'm going to come over here into here and see if this runs. Now it said doesn't enroll. Oh, it doesn't enroll. Enrolls.
Because he's never been contacted.
Right. So I wonder if I can force him to enroll. Workflow completed. And looks like it didn't run. It says it ran, but I don't believe it. Let's try a different test. Oh, you know what? Maybe we need to update the contact date, or I'd have to pick a different. Let's just say contacts can be manually enrolled. Test contact. We need to find one that is sort of. Well, I think actually, if we manually enroll him, then it says doesn't enroll, but okay. And now, honestly, this is where it says it's completed. I even got the finish line checkered mark. However, I did not see the call come through. So maybe this is where we need to do a part 2, but I'm bummed that we can't see this actually happen. Did I need to hit save? Maybe I need to publish it. Let's try, don't think I need to publish it to do that. Let's try testing this again. Interesting. Contacts in action.
This is a good cliffhanger indeed.
It is. It is.
And I think ultimately, this is great. Like this composability, like the goal of these episodes is what are the building blocks? Like what is the foundation needed? And then what can be done? Like until we understand the foundation and the building blocks involved and how everything works together, where the data goes, like it doesn't matter what the shiny objects at the end are if we don't know how to use this stuff. So
so we got setup done, but I'm going to need a little bit more time to get this to. It'll be a little bit longer session. I think we had a lot of fun talking to at the beginning. So if you'll have me back, I'd love to finish this and work through this is the moment we all hit. We're like, why is this not? And if I had prepped a little bit more, it would have been perfect. But then you'd be struggling and you'd be like, how come it's not working for me? So I will maybe I'll leave this here. And we'll do a session where we actually get this thing to run and show everyone the results.
Sounds good.
Okay.
But I'd say for everybody out there, as we wait for part 2, like these moments of research that everybody does is a great opportunity and find ways to learn to like rely on AI to do a lot of this stuff. So until then, find those opportunities and let's go. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, Chris.